Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you're joining us from. Thank you for being here with us today to learn about how the culture of quality makes sense for your organization. Anthony Murphy, Vice President of Product Management, is our presenter today. If you have any questions during the webinar, please type them into the chat section of your GoToWebinar screen. We will have some time for Q&A after the webinar. If we don't get to your question, we will follow up with you directly after the webinar is over. We are recording today's webinar and you will receive a link to the recording via email next week. And with that, I'll turn it over to Anthony.
Well, perfect. Thank you. And hey, thanks everybody for being here today. As mentioned, my name is Anthony Murphy. I'm the Vice President of Product Management for Plex. And I've been at Plex for 13 years now and have done everything from implementation and customer success to product to growth and just about everything in between, but always focused very much on our customers and how we can help our customers digitally transform. But prior to Plex, I spent 13 years in manufacturing as well and held a variety of roles, everything from logistics and purchasing to operations, quality, did a little stint in finance, though I don't talk about that too much. I'm afraid someone's going to steal my lunch money. But one of the things that was central to my time in manufacturing was very much around how we could use digital tools to help us scale. And so when we think about it at Plex, we believe that the future of manufacturing is smart, that it's autonomous, and that it's going to be digital, right? And that a company's agility and their ability to digitize, to automate, to integrate, and also continuously improve in real time is what's going to be what separates successful manufacturers from those that are just merely hanging on or merely surviving. And so when we think about it, quality is more than just a department. It's a mindset, it's a culture, and it extends beyond things like cost of poor quality or parts per million. Quality is in every interaction you have with your customer. So if you think about how fast you're turning around quotes or responding to requests for info or even in dealing with issues, it's how you engage with suppliers and build that relationship with them. And likewise, how you engage with your local community, and likewise your employee and your employee experience. All of those things are emblems and opportunities for quality. And so to be able to drive quality as a culture and have this fully harmonized quality mindset across all departments or plants and even organizations, if you're a big multinational, multi-site company, to make quality a competitive advantage, it has to be digital. And so before we get too far into it, I want to start with a little bit of a polling question, right? When we think about quality and the impacts of quality, recalls are one of those sort of like measures of poor quality. And so when we think about it, from your perspective, what is the largest cost for your business in recalls? Is it damage to the brand reputation, legal fees, lost sales, regulatory fines, or even retrieval and disposal of the affected products? Again, those real hard dollars and cents. So interested to get your perspective. Results are rolling in. It's actually an interesting split. Damage to brand reputation and disposal of affected products kind of neck and neck, but the damage to brand reputation is coming out pretty strong. And that's absolutely it. And we'll talk a little bit more about it because it's on both sides of it. It's both the top line and the bottom line. And we'll talk a little bit about what it means when you think about how a culture of quality can help both the top and bottom line. One of the things we super interested in is we want to get your perspective, we want to get your feedback, and likewise want to give you a little bit of a reward for doing so. And so one of the things that's super interesting for us is we want to hear what resonated with you, something that you learned, something you take away. It's helpful for us as we think about how the industry is thinking about things, and likewise we want to make it worth your while. So take some notes, share on LinkedIn just by tagging @Plex. By Rockwell or #Plex, and then we'll reach out and get a $10 Amazon gift card. Super easy. I've been informed I'm not allowed to participate, so it's completely objective and it's all about you. So before we get too far into it, and again, thinking about a little bit of that top and bottom line, let's take just a little bit of a step back and look at where manufacturing has been. Now, we have seen a bunch of things and trends that have been accelerated and issues that have been exacerbated. Like, everybody's talking about digitization and digital transformation. We're talking a lot about skilled labor shortage, but those things have been going on for decades, right? Different sort of conversations, different rates of change. But for decades, leading manufacturers have been striving to improve their performance and increase efficiencies. That's how we've defined success, right? So we've been chasing performance and efficiency forever, right? We're in a very margin-constrained business. Now, one of the levers and measures of performance is quality. If I don't have rework or scrap or waste, if I have good first pass yield and low cost and poor quality, then I'm naturally more efficient. Now, this is nothing new, and if you were surprised by any of this, we'd probably need to have a different conversation altogether. But the challenge is, right, as an industry, if you think about performance and efficiency in the area of quality, we're not there yet. If you look at the automotive market, in 2021 alone, there were 1,000 safety recall campaigns. 35 million cars on the road had an open recall in 2021. And regardless of your role in manufacturing, quality and safety are more than the hard dollars in business. This is what the poll we just talked about was showing, right? It's about protecting and saving lives. If you sort of deconstruct those numbers, there are something like 6 million car crashes every single year. Now, that's like 16,000 a day, or 1 in every 5 seconds. Now, 4.4 million people go to the hospital every year as a result of accidents, but only for minor injuries, right? And the thing that stands in the way of those 4.4 million injuries to becoming something more serious, well, it's the quality and the safety systems in the vehicles. Now, it's certainly the airbags and the seat belts and these, but it's also these sort of seemingly innocuous pieces of plastic and metal layered across the vehicle. We have at Plex customers who make automotive components, and one of the things that they make is a glove box. And they're like, Anthony, the glove box is not just to hold gloves or your instruction manual. It's actually a safety system. It's designed to help you in the event of a car crash. So having those not only installed, but produced to spec is what helps protect and save lives. And that becomes why quality is so important. But there's business impacts too, right? Again, going back to our poll results, it's about brand risk and reputation. A recall can cost millions of dollars in true costs, but even more in brand damage, right? And if you think about all of the shortages we've had in the supply chain, right, and what that impact is to the consumer and our ability to hit revenue targets, if we have a recall, that just means we produced a bunch of bad product, and we get even further and further behind. And if you look at the other hard costs, if you look at the bottom line, just about every year there's roughly $20 billion in charges to the automotive market as a result of recalls, right? And we know some of the bigger recalls over the last 5 to 10 years that have cost billions and billions of dollars. But the average cost of an automotive recall is actually going up. It's right now about $500 per vehicle, but that's going up as you think about EVs and the components and the more expense that goes into them. So it has very much top and bottom line impacts. But it's not just for the automotive market. If you look at the food and beverage industry, very similar story. In 2021, just in the US alone, 47 food safety recalls and 15 million pounds of food was recalled, right? Now, the average cost of one of those food and beverage recalls is $10 million. And so it's a significant amount of expense. And again, as you think about the impacts of cost of food, an impact of inflation, that year-over-year cost to both the business as well as the impact to sales, as well as the impact to brand reputation continues to grow. And so if you think about it, recalls stem from poor quality, and then poor quality stems from a lack of operational rigor, governance, and control. And so for most of the manufacturing world, managing safety and quality is done manually. It's done ad hoc. It's in a reactive manner, and it's sort of seen as one department's job, right? Quality is quality's job. And it's a very product-centric approach. And it's that combination that leads to poor quality and what leads to recalls. And so let me give you a sense of what I mean by this sort of ad hoc and reactive approach. I have the pleasure and opportunity to talk to manufacturers across the world every single day. And so when we get to meet with, whether it's CEOs or CIOs or plant managers or quality managers, and we're talking about digital transformation, but as importantly, quality as a culture, we see most companies using a document-based process flow that looks a little bit like this, right? So those customer and industry compliance and quality documents tend to be paper-based, and they tend to move around in a manual fashion, right? We still see fax being a thing that gets used from time to time, but email and it's not integrated with the manufacturing moment. And then everything gets printed and it gets sent down. And then you've got somebody who's typically running around the shop, distributing the quality documents, and then going around every 4 hours or at the end of every shift, picking it back up, giving it to someone in data entry, and they're typing the information in, right? And so as you think about it, at best, it's following the process. It's not driving the manufacturing moment, right? And if you think about a change or a deviation, it could be days before these documents get updated and make it back to where it's supposed to be. And how many times have you had where you're like, yeah, I got all of the old documents, the old revs, they're off the floor, and the new revs are all distributed, and then the auditor comes and they find the one workstation where the one operator had that one job traveler or one spec he just like has had in his drawer, and it's to an old rev, right? And you're like, man, I'm sure I pulled all those back. And I'm like, nope, had it in my back pocket. It's my favorite one. I'm not letting it go. And again, so the paper doesn't, and it can't drive the process, and it can't direct good behavior. At best, paper can follow the process, and that's not scalable and it's not sustainable. And so here's what I mean. A lot of manufacturers have this central command that looks a little bit like this, right? It's a system that's too manual, it's decentralized, it's paper-based. And again, those things are, the paper is hand-carried between activities. The copies of the work instructions and check sheets may or may not be up to date. And then how do you know? Again, how do you know that there isn't 1 or 2 copies of those documents that are out there? And then no matter how good the paperwork is, it doesn't operationalize the quality system, right? It's just designed to follow the process. And so you're like, probably like, yeah, no, we get it, Anthony. Quality is a challenge in and of itself. We live that every day. But what does that mean in true measures for my business? And so we typically see negative consequences that look a little bit like this, right? That poorly integrated quality doesn't help identify problems in real time or before they occur. And that's what leads to recall. There's a lot of variability, and that variability means expense, right? Because I don't have control over my business, and so I can't tell you if it's going to be this or this, and so I have to spend more money to make sure that I'm always at the right metric. The managing of the documents is manual and frankly a nightmare, and it takes a lot of time. Keeping up with the changing standards, which are increasing, and that rate of change of those standards is increasing. And look, quality is never the most overly staffed position, and so resources are stretched thin. And so it just results in higher business risk, lower supplier ratings, costs go up, non-compliance is more frankly of a concern than it needs to be, and it hurts competitiveness in the marketplace. So if you think about it, it's 2023 now. Why most of manufacturing, why are we still struggling? And it's because most of manufacturing still thinks of quality like we did in the industrial era. We approach quality like we approach the assembly line, that sort of linear, algebraic, old-fashioned approach. And so here's what I mean. And you're like, hey, we showed up for a quality webinar. Why are you talking about math? I'm a nerd. I like math. So we've got inputs, right? Most of manufacturers start with the inputs around process, product, and people training and enablement, right? And those lead to, hopefully, outputs, quality outputs on product, delivery, and audit quality. And then we measure the success through outcomes, cost of poor quality, first pass yield, rework, scrap and waste rates, right? It's this sort of, again, A, inputs plus outputs B equals C, the outcomes. But if you think about it, today's environment is more interconnected, it's more complex, it's more dynamic. Quality can't be thought of one department's job, and it can't be solely looked at through the lens of product quality. It has to be holistic, and it has to be continuous. Now, when we say holistic, we mean that quality comes from everyone, and it's driven not by a department, right? So it's not just the quality department, but it's a bit of an organizational ethos. And it's not just about products, it's about employees, it's about customers, it's about community, it's about suppliers, it's about the environment. And the reason for that whole holistic approach is relatively simple. To build a scalable and sustainable business, one that persists regardless of trends or events, a business that can not only satisfy today's requirements, but the ability to satisfy requirements over time in a predictable, repeatable, and accurate manner. Excellence, resilience, and agility has to be embedded and improved at every level of the organization. It has to come with and from every single employee. If you're solely reliant on management or leadership to determine quality, then you'll always be lagging. The change and the rate of change is continuous, right? And it's continuing to increase. That velocity is growing. And so that's why culture is important. Culture is circular and it's intentional. It's about building from the inside out. It's not linear and it's not that algebraic A plus B equals C. Culture is like calculus. It means it's a function of continuous change and continuous improvement. But we're manufacturing, right? You know, that all makes sense, Anthony. That's great, get it. But it still has to support the top and bottom line. We've got a business to run. We've got margins to hit. We've got customers to satisfy. And so I'll take you through a little bit of the why the culture of quality is important to the business as well as to the financials. And then we'll look at what a culture of quality looks like and a few tips. So let's dig in and talk some numbers. There was a multi-year study done by CEB across more than 6 domestic and international manufacturers, and they did over 1,000 employee interviews, and they were looking at quality culture and what it looks like to create a culture of quality, and as importantly, what the hard benefits are. Now, they ranked companies on the overall success. They're based on profits, employee and customer loyalty, and they found that the bottom performers, those who were just like barely hanging on, right, talked a lot about total quality management, but they were focused solely on the legacy methods that I talked about, that linear inputs, outputs, outcomes approach, that A plus B equals C. Now, when they took it further, they studied the health of those bottom performers. They found that the bottom performers spent 64% more on mistakes, issues, and errors, which led to them spending 2x more to resolve. So benchmarking against bottom performers and top performers, bottom performers had 64% more issues and had to spend 2x more to fix those issues. Now, think about 2x, regardless of your business, regardless of the size of your business, 2x is a lot. Imagine all of the other things you could be doing with that money and that time. Look, none of us have enough money, none of us have enough time. Productivity is at the top of all of our minds. Imagine if we had 2x the productivity, what could we do? And so when they dug into that data just a little bit further, they found that part of the cause was 60% of the employees, again, in those bottom performers, said they work in an environment without a culture of quality, where peers aren't going above and beyond, where they're not seeing good modeled on a daily basis. And so the stakes and the ramifications are higher. And when you think about a culture of quality, this is the impact of not having a culture of quality. Now, when you contrast that with the top performers, they found some interesting things. The top 20% were driving peer-driven, mission-informed practices in addition to training and total quality management and all of those standard metrics. So you can't just throw, TQM out the window. You can't stop thinking of cost of poor quality, but you have to augment it with this holistic approach. Now, what that meant is that the top 20% had less than half of the mistakes and half of the spend to address those mistakes. So if you do the math, that checks out, right? If you're spending 2x in the bottom 20%, you're spending less than that in the top. And so you think about that, right? That movement from the bottom to the top and what that means in hard dollars and cents, right? Direct results on the bottom line. That's real money. But if you think about it, it's all about the top line as well. So that same study found that they went not only looked at the manufacturers, but they surveyed the customers that those manufacturers supplied, and found that those buyers of those companies look for vendors and suppliers that they trust and that others trust. So they're very much looking at like, hey, do I trust you? But I'm also talking to references and other people like me to see if you're a good vendor, and who have values of sustainability and quality. So this having a culture of quality where every person is engaging directly impacts both the bottom line and the top line, right? And so when we talk about the bottom line, there is significant impact there as well. And so again, did more math, did more looking. For every 5,000 employees moving from that bottom 20% to that top 20% through the culture of quality, it would mean that you'd save $67 million annually. Now, not all of us have 5,000 employees or multiples of 5,000 employees. So if that's too big, if you break it down, having a culture of quality is effectively saying we can save $13,400 for each individual employee. If you have 100 employees, that's $1.3 million every single year. So it's certainly this, fluffy concept. It's esoteric, but it has this top and bottom line impact as you think about the real business challenges, as you think about driving margin, as you think about driving positive business outcomes. Sorry, okay, we get it. We understand how most manufacturers view quality today. It's that linear A plus B equals C approach. We understand how that approach can negatively impact both the top and bottom line, even for small businesses. So this isn't a big, Fortune 500 thing alone. It's for all of manufacturers. So your next logical question is, if a culture of quality isn't linear, what is it and how can we drive it? Well, I'm glad you asked, because that's what we're going to go into next. When we talk about a culture, quality as a culture, it really means an environment where all employees not only follow those quality guidelines, so the TQM type things, but they can also consistently seeing others take quality focused actions. They hear others talking about quality and they feel quality all around them. And then the employees in turn perpetuate the culture by continuing to change and grow and improve. Remember that sort of calculus, that continuous improvement, that continuous change. And so it extends beyond just the quality of the product. It's a culture of quality with every stakeholder, both inside and outside of the organization. And it typically has 6 key aspects to it. So it looks a little bit like this, and we'll dive into more details as we go forward. So first and foremost, there has to be a leadership emphasis on it. It has to be driven from the top and communicated down, consistent reporting, consistent communication. While culture eventually becomes, every employee starts taking it and owning it, if it's not important to leadership and not consistently communicated, it won't matter to the employees and it won't take. When we think about how we drive the requirements, it has to be real time, right? If I'm doing something today and I don't find out if it's good or bad till like 6 months from now, that isn't going to reinforce good. And so it needs to be communicated in real time across the entire enterprise as well as the employee base. When you think about how you measure success, you have to redefine it. TQM is super important, cost of poor quality and first pass yield, all of those things are important, but you have to be thinking about the broader approach now, the customer, the community, the environment, the product, and the employee outcomes. And thinking about how do you make it predictable, repeatable, and accurate across every interaction, across every business process, and driving that down to the employees so that they are owning the outcomes and they are owning continuous improvements and they're seeing the impact of those continuous improvements, right? And then it becomes embedded throughout the organization. And so again, it's not linear, it's circular, and each of those elements are consistently informing the culture. And so we'll talk about some tips on how to drive this in some measures here next. So before we get into that, creating a culture of quality is a journey. So just quickly, as we've gone through and you've seen some of the things that we've been talking about, where do you see your company on this path, right? We've started to create a culture of quality and we're seeing some success. The leadership and everybody knows what our company is about. And over there, it's like, it's all there somewhere, but we're still sort of working our way through the journey. So interested to see where the results are coming out. Yeah, it's sort of neck and neck. And we're seeing a lot of manufacturing companies starting to really drive this culture of quality and starting the journey. In some cases, not sure. We know it's something we need to do. We know it's an area we need to go. Not sure how to carry it forward, and likewise, not sure how to scale it. So seeing roughly about 50% there, the 36-ish% are like, yep, it's all there. We just don't know how to pull it all together. And then a little bit in the middle, the balance around, hey, we know what the company is all about. It's just about how do we advance it. And that's pretty consistent. I think the organization or the industry rather writ large is starting to move as we think about, not only employee and labor shortages and retention, as we think about big things like ESG, as we think about engaging with our communities, but it can be a little bit nebulous and a little bit hard to understand where to start, where to go, and how do we make this thing scalable. And so we'll talk a little bit about that next, and likewise talk a little bit about how Plex helps drive that sort of culture of quality within manufacturing. So I'll share a little bit with you on some tips that we've seen be successful. These are some of the things that I've implemented as part of my background in manufacturing, but as I mentioned, I have the great honor and luxury of talking to manufacturers every single day, large and small, and these are things that we see the most successful manufacturers, those that are leading the charge, use to be successful. Now, I kept this slide intentionally text heavy so you can read it and take away. This is not marketing, did not create this slide. This was all me because I wanted it to be very, very specific and something that you could take away and use. So the first and foremost is, I mentioned this, it's got to be a priority for leadership. Culture has to be intentional and it has to be reinforced and shown that it's a priority. If it's not driven and communicated from the highest levels, it won't be successful. Culture will happen when you're not looking. So you have to be intentional, you have to be consistent, and you have to be rigorous about it. You need to help employees connect to the broader purpose and help them understand the products that they produce, how they impact a bigger mission, right? And so if you think about automotive, it's where do the parts go and how does it impact the customer? How it helps and protect and save lives or serves the environments, right? It's not just about the product and piece count, it's about the end purpose and the impact it can have. I mentioned earlier about one of the Plex customers we have that makes interior components, and they helped their team understand that the glove box, which tends to be the butt of a bunch of jokes, because it's like, I don't put my gloves in there, all it does is store napkins and the user manual. It's like, no, that's actually a safety system that's designed to protect your life. And so they implemented this sort of culture of quality, and their productivity as well as their quality went up. Now, if you're in the food industry, as an example, connecting the team to the impact your products can have is important, right? Are you helping families get to affordable nutrition or driving a healthier and balanced nutrition for everyone, even those that don't have the time or the budget? Those are the things that you can do to help connect employees to the broader purpose, and then it infuses this desire for quality. Like, who's going to make, be like, it's fine, it's just for, families who are trying to get affordable nutrition. No, you're going to be connected to the cause. You're going to want to do a better job. Now, on that note, you have to find the message and approach that works for you in your organization, right? Now, it may be different based upon the plant, the geography, or even the local culture, but find the message and approach that'll resonate. For some, it will absolutely be about the mission and the mission for the broader purpose and the end consumer. For others, it could be about the purpose of the company and how what we're doing and having good quality advances our growth and goes directly to the bottom line. So it may not be one size fits all, and it may be different from company to company. And so you're going to really want to spend time understanding what is the message that is going to resonate for your environments. The next is all about highlighting the successes and show that successes aren't just the hockey stick up and to the right metrics, right? So you can't make it all rosy, you can't make it all up to the right, but you got to make success certainly about those things, but also about the issues you stopped, the tough decisions you made, the growth that you've had, and you have to celebrate those, right? So if you think about celebrating a success of, we were about to ship a product, but it was on the edge of poor quality, and we decided to hold it back, we've now reinforced the message that, look, quality is paramount to us. And look, we don't love that we had to hold this thing back, but we did the right thing. And then that starts to infuse it into the culture. So people say, oh, okay, we really take this seriously. And then it starts marching its way back up into the production process because we don't want to stop the shipments. We understand the broader purpose and the impact it has. We understand the impact to the bottom line. We understand that quality is important, and we're going to naturally start to move those better processes through earlier into the manufacturing process. And we talked about metrics, but it's important to define, publish, and share the metrics across all facets of the business. So broaden the scope of your quality metrics and make them around customer outcomes and community. Think about things like ESG, certainly product quality, that has to be there and important, but also look at things like employee satisfaction, employee retention, and customer satisfaction and customer retention. And again, share the good, the bad, and the ugly. People attach to that and resonate and are like, how do I change the metric that's not good to good? And then likewise, involve a diverse team and team members. And so you want to bring everyone along. And so when you think about things like root cause analysis, a culture of quality needs to be peer driven. And the more engagement that you have, across a larger employee base, the more you'll be able to build that grassroots effort. So bring frontline employees into the continuous improvement efforts. One of the things we've seen be super successful with our customers is when they have a root cause and they're doing 5 why, they will actually bring in team members from other organizations or departments to participate in that team, even if it's not wasn't relative to that department. And what it does is it brings this outside in perspective on things maybe that the group that had the issue doesn't see. But it also, when that group disbands, when they get to the 5 why, that person who is in, from another organization or department or even another production line takes that back and starts talking about it and says, hey, I was involved in this and this is what we're doing. We are taking it seriously. And it starts to build that grassroots effort and it starts to naturally spread the word. And it's a really super simple, easy, low cost way to get an outside in perspective and likewise help drive that culture of quality. Now, I mentioned that it is obviously all about the top and bottom line and how do you measure success. And so there's a couple of metrics that we recommend. And so again, when you think of defining quality as a culture, it's all about, we got to sort of pop up and up level our thinking and reporting and metrics. And again, focus on employee, customer, community, and business outcomes. And look to measure success in terms of financial ratios. And so we put a couple on here just for, for reference. And again, there's a ton more that you can think about, but just to get the brain going a little bit. When you think about employees, it's the retention, it's the turnover, it's measuring employee engagement. How likely are your employees, how engaged are your employees in the business, in the work? Thinking about things from a customer perspective, a culture of quality is looking at how quickly are we responding to our customers, even if we're just doing a request for quote. How long does it take us there? And can we bring that down to give our customers a quicker time to response, a quicker time to resolution on issues? Looking at customer satisfaction and measuring that, and looking at retention rates for our customers. So how often are we getting repeat orders? Now, the other side is the community, and this is can be a little bit tougher to measure, but it's important to, if you think about the community that you work and engage in, your employees come from that community, a lot of the environmental standards, and as you think about taxation and all those types of things. And so it's important to engage with the community and be there and measure a sort of awareness and sentiment so that you can continue to, again, take that outside-in approach. But the hard and fast dollars of it is we think about quality, looking at expense and trend ratios. Remember I said, if there's variability in any of your measures, those are expensive. That means you don't have your process under control. It means you have to spend more. Because you're not scaling. And so looking at things like audit costs as a percentage of overall expense and trend over time, like when you bring in outside auditors to help you prepare, right? Many organizations will have true quality related costs as high as something like 15 to 20% of sales revenue, some going as high as 40% of total operations. But generally, in a thriving company, you're going to want to see cost of poor quality in about the 10 to 15%. Right, and so again, trying to measure that and measuring the variability and trending just helps you understand where you are. And as you think about all the things around cost of quality, cost of poor quality, scrap as a percentage of revenue, but thinking about, again, the audit fees. In a lot of cases, if you're preparing for like an ISO audit or customer audit, you bring someone in beforehand to help you, right? Or you have your team, an internal team help you. Typically, you'll see something like an average audit fee as a percentage of revenue for a mid-capital company, think about, greater than 10 million revenue is about 0.2%. Now, in some cases, you'll see that as high as 0.46%, right? So as the bigger you get, the higher those audit fees are. But again, those are great ways as you think about measuring the success of a culture of quality. Great ways to measure if you're having success or not, because those are the measures underneath the measures and sort of leading indicators of if things are going well or not. All right, so when you think about how to drive quality as a culture, I've been talking a lot about scale and making it easy, and we need to make it easy for people to do the right thing, easy for people to be connected to the mission and the cause, easy for people to get real-time information, and you have to do that at scale. You can't rely on people to collect the data, people to fill out the charts, people to run around and communicate the metrics, right? And so you need digital tools to get there. And so Industry 2.0 and 3.0 was that sort of algebraic A plus B equals C approach. And it helped, but it didn't consider the continuous change and that sort of outside-in approach we've been talking about. Customers, suppliers, employees, community, and the environment. And that's really what Industry 4.0 is about. If you kind of break it down and you take away the hype and get to sort of brass tacks, it's all about providing the tools for continuous change and continuous improvement in an easy to adopt way, right? And so when you think about these technologies, cloud computing, sensors and automation, wireless connectivity, and again, those digitized operations, it's all designed to help you get to scale, help you drive this culture of quality at scale. And that's what Plex does. We were built with a different approach, purpose-built from a manufacturing perspective to what manufacturers need. We are a multi-tenant software as a service, cloud-native solution, and built on a single digital system of record, and likewise engagement. One database, one system, always on, always current software. So you don't have to worry about that weird, like, oh, there's a new standard, and then we released it, and I have to do this crazy migration and upgrade. All of that goes away. But we designed the software to connect people, systems, and machines, and even supply chains. So every piece of the business, that outside-in approach, is all working together, and we're eliminating the silos. At the same time, automating those business processes so that we can drive efficiency and remove that error-prone manual process that I was talking about with the person running around the shopping cart, right? And we build a system to make it easy to do the right thing and easy to drive continuous improvement. And likewise, with that connected and automated system, we're tracking all of the data down from the individual asset and sensor up to the machine and to the operator, so that you have that total visibility for anyone in the company in real time. So again, it makes it easy to govern the process and make it easy for people to do the right thing, but also easy to report on what's working and what's not working and where you need to focus your time. And then likewise, the analyze piece, which is, again, how do you make quick and informed decisions based on insight rather than gut calls or trying to get in and look at a bunch of data. So here's what we mean by all of that. We talked about how do you scale a little bit earlier, and in order to have quality of culture, how it has to self-perpetuate and continuously change and improve. And the only way you can do that is through digital systems that drive the process, drive the reporting, and drive the accountability. Now, if you think about that plant floor I showed way at this shop, it's one of my favorite slides with the person running around with the shopping cart, distributing and collecting paper. What we do is every facet of the manufacturing process, we replace the paper, and then even outside of the four walls of the manufacturing into the supply chain, so the customer and the supplier, and even into the broader community. That's what we mean when we talk about quality as a culture and quality as a mindset, every interaction with every stakeholder. And so digitizing and mistake proofing the entire process through intentional design. And this is what makes quality infinitely scalable, right? Quality can scale with the growth of the company and help with margin through reduction of error, as well as less manual processes and headcount. You don't have to rely on people to input the data, collect the data, or any of those types of things. It just becomes an extension of the quality team. And we get great feedback from our customers and how it helps govern the process and stops at each step to make sure you're doing the right thing. How it's, again, all completely integrated and even drives inventory and manufacturing governance. And each piece is sort of a digital derivative, right? So when you think about the upper compliance documents feeding into the FEMA or the HACCP, into the check sheets, and again, the data all the way back around, completely and fully integrated. So it starts at, I'll go in a little more detail, it starts at the highest level when we think about compliance, right? And so we have a digital compliance manager, which allows our customers to define how they comply. Could be customer standards, could be industry standards. We have templates built out of the box for things like industry standards around automotive and food and beverage. But it also has a workflow-driven process behind it with conditional approval scenarios, and it's all no code, so you don't need an IT degree or an engineering degree to go figure it out. So you can make sure that not only are you saying what you do, but you do what you say, and you've got the governance and the audit. So Anthony's out of the office or isn't doing his job correctly, the system will continue to find the right person by escalating accordingly. From there, we take that and we drill into, if you're in the food and bev, HACCP, and automotive or discrete FEMA, and that's where all of the potential failure modes and control points. So how are we going to govern and drive compliance? And if we respond, if we deviate from standards. And so we we look at, part of our value proposition is we continue to look at the market and all the changes, and we build those into the software. So it's immediately available for all of our customers. So if you're in the automotive market and you know the VDA and AIAG standards that came out a couple of years ago, Ford just recently came out with their standards. Food and beverage, the new HACCP standards are coming out in a couple of years. That's part of what we do, is understand what those are and build them directly into the software. Now from there, we drop into the control panel. So it's kind of like this funnel down into the execution. Again, fully closed loop. How do we keep the process in check and govern the operations? Now, this is created directly from the FEMA or the HACCP, and likewise the product routing. So there's no chance to break that linkage. Again, say what you do what you say. And then we get into the execution, which is the digital check sheets, right? The execution and the governance. Operators, completely configurable, both quantitative and qualitative. We can even randomize the answers to make sure that we're not just checking all the things that are on the left-hand box. But required, whether it's an operator, a machine, or a gauge, fill them out before proceeding, right? And again, it can be done at startup, it can be done piece count, event-based, or even job end. And again, these are all derivatives of the control plan. So we've set up what we need to do, said where we need to check, how we need to respond if something's going out of kilter, and then these check sheets come directly from that. And then again, all about continuous improvement and continuous change. And so our problem control module allows for root cause analysis with out-of-the-box capabilities, if you think about things like 8Ds and 5 Ys, but it's also a low-code, no-code solution that allows customers to create custom forms so they can quickly tailor to meet their needs. So it could be, I have a specific customer, and if we have an issue, this is how we need to address it, or I am going to try to drive down my time to quote. And so there's a different approach I need to take that. All of that is available to be configured. Again, no need for an IT degree or an engineering degree. So all of these things are, you can see how they're all completely linked, all digital derivatives of each other, all cloud native, fully configurable, again, low code, no code tools. So it again, quick time to value and continuously updated to be sure that you're not off on an island or you're scrambling to respond to the latest standard change. But we talked about quality being more than just a department. It's putting the empowerment in the hands of the employee, right? So I talked very much just about what we're doing around quality very specifically, but we also need to think about all employees and how we think about driving production operations as well. And so the heart of production for Plex is the control panel. It's that sort of digital cockpit for the employee. And it brings together all aspects necessary to drive the process, to inform the employees and empower them to make good and quality products. And as importantly, that they're engaged in the process. So we think about how do we drive good production, right? And there's all the tools that are there for that. They can see the progress and the results with production reports. So again, remember that real-time access to data and metrics so they can see how they're progressing without somebody having to come collect the information, type in the information, and then run a report out to them. So all of that immediately available to them. And drive awareness and updates as well as you think about key changes that are coming or key messages, all part of driving that connected worker. And then likewise, full control over all aspects of the business. Again, quality is every department. It's maintenance, it's quality, it's tooling. All of that is there. So make sure you're using the right gauge, make sure you're using the right tooling, make sure that if you do have an issue with maintenance, that it's surfaced, or if you've got planned maintenance, automatically take the line down. All of that is fully there, fully interconnected. And even things like suggestions. So allowing those that are closest to the process to make recommendations on how to continuously improve. All of that is there. All of that is completely interconnected. So we talked about quality as a culture as more than just hard and fast product metrics. And so these are just a couple of customers examples, again, across the globe that are realizing some measurable results having implemented Plex. And again, there's some bottom line metrics we'll talk about, but there's some real culture as quality here as well. So Thai Summit increased employee engagement by 2x as a result of implementing Plex. And so when you think about employee retention, engagement is critical and using the software to drive that. Polymer Precision in a regulated industry drove sales growth without adding headcount by 300%. In the automotive market, Kumi, 9 consecutive delivery awards from their largest customers. And then Floorcraft, which you may not know the name, but I guarantee you use some of their products if you've ever done any sort of arts and crafts. One of the biggest suppliers to the industry. They were able to get to cost accuracy in 1/10 of a cent, and using that to drive business outcomes. But we can't forget about the product metrics, right? And so they're an important piece of it. And so, again, the balance between the top line, employee engagement, customer satisfaction, as well as the bottom line. And we're seeing Aaron Thomas, for example, boosting audit efficiencies and getting to the recall executed in 7 minutes consistently, driving that variability out of the process. Large automotive companies like American Axle bringing down inventory while increasing output. And if you think about the service aspect of manufacturing, G&W getting to 98% on-time delivery, best in class parts per million, and A&K getting to bringing their waste and scrap rates down to 1.5%. So literally cutting it in half. That's what it looks like to drive a culture of quality as a mindset in both the hard and fast business results, as well as the top line customer results. So with that, that's a bit, but I think we got a couple of minutes for questions, and so we'll open the Q&A and take some questions.
Thank you, Anthony. All right, we have one question so far. If anyone on the line has questions, please feel free to type them into the questions box or the chat box as well. How does the Plex quality management system meet AIAG compliance requirements?
AIAG compliance. Was that the question?
Yes. How does the Plex quality management system meet AIAG compliance requirements?
Gotcha. Yeah. So we did. There was in 2019. There was we affectionately called it FEMA V5. AIAG and VDA came out with the new standard. And so when you think about, again, how do you link compliance down to check sheets, how you build out control plans, how you link control plans, we put all of that into the software, again, to make it easy. And one of the things that we looked at, and I'll talk about some of the more recent changes that just came out this year, or actually 2022, the amount of effort that was required to administer those changes, when you think about not only breaking out your process FEMAs, but your part FEMAs and your families, was just, it was a lot. And it required a ton of administrative overhead. And so one of the things we did is not only build that full linkage so that everything from part, process, and families is completely interconnected, and then that likewise drives down to the check sheets, and then likewise you collect the data from the check sheets to govern the operations, but also report out. But we also looked at how can we eliminate some of that administrative overhead to not only create your FEMAs, but also as you think about updating them, making it easier. And so we pulled out something like 30% of the administrative overhead when we were talking with our customers who had adopted it, and made it a little bit easier. So that's the thing that we did there. With some of the more recent changes, which right now are just Ford specific, but we expect, and we've been talking to some of the OEMs that are sort of watching what Ford's doing and expect to roll that out over the next 2 to 3 years. Very much the same thing as you think about, there's roughly 70% of Ford supply chain still uses Excel spreadsheets to manage their FEMA process. And again, it's disconnected. And that's part of the challenge because if it's in an Excel spreadsheet, try to update that. That takes time. And then if you got a 1,000-row spreadsheet, like how are you going to remember, like, oh, it was row 753 that I need to go update. And so one of the things that we did was, again, driving that connection from part to process, and again, driving that full linkage to families. Again, that makes it easier to administer. But also, as you make those updates, they can cascade. And then we also put in the capabilities to say, A, first of all, make sure that you're making this update. This is all the impacts. Are you sure you want to do that? And then B, if you're going to make a change, you can see where you need to make that change or the downstream impacts. And so we built all of that into the software to A, make it super easy to comply. Everything's interconnected, super visible, but also try to pull out some of the administrative overhead. Like nobody wants to be administering FEMAs, and that's not our job, right? And so we should let the software do that work. And so that's part of the work that we put in the software that we built.
Great, thank you, Anthony. At this time, I'm not seeing any other questions come through. Oh, actually, I'm so sorry. 1 second. Looks like there is one. Is there IATF linkage to CSRs beyond the FEMA requirements?
Yeah, so when you talk about, again, all of that linkage, part of the work that we do is you could think about that compliance manager, like you can make that for anything. It could be for AIG standards, IATF, regardless of industry, and then how you link that down. And all of that's completely configurable. So it can be even in addition to things outside of FEMA, outside of part and product quality. There may be standards that you need to do and how you manage your business, from how you handle customer data or respond to customer data, or what suppliers or vendors that you use. And so when you think about like even the primary data from, call it supplier data, even supplier addresses that you can or cannot receive from, if you think about what comes in and what's required from a documentation perspective, all of that is driven and can be, again, beyond just the product.
Great, thanks, Anthony. All right, at this time, I'm not seeing any other questions come through, and we are getting close to the top of the hour. Just a couple of reminders for everyone on the line. Thank you again for joining us today. We will send this recording out via email next week, so please be on the lookout for that. You can share it with your colleagues as well. And if you post on LinkedIn and tag Rockwell, or Plex, Plex by Rockwell, and or hashtag us, then we will send you a $10 Amazon gift card. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day. Thank you, Anthony.
Take care, everybody.